Welcome. Good morning,
Welcome.
everyone. I'm Reverend Barber here at Emerson Universal in Houston, Texas. Our beloved community of reason, affection welcomes all to grow in mind and spirit as together we build a better world. If you are joining us for the first time this morning, we extend a special welcome to you and invite you to fill out our visitor card so you can receive more information about Emerson and our activities. Again, welcome to all. We are a church in many places, some of us here in the pews, and some joining us on YouTube from home or wherever you might be. And our world is a different one than it was in early 2020. Our worship service has changed accordingly. We're giving people choices in the pews as to distance between families and whether or not they would like to continue masking. We've put a few offering baskets at the front and back of the sanctuary for people to drop off their offering throughout the service, rather than passing the plates. For those of us in the sanctuary this morning, let's take a moment to picture the dozens of friends, neighbors, and those we've not yet met who are taking part in the service on YouTube, either right now or later in the week as their schedules allow. Let us please remember to silence our cell phones so that we may have a peaceful time during our worship service today. Following the worship service, folks in the pews may head out to the gathering place for snacks and beverages, perhaps head out to the courtyard and playground to chat, and we'll also have social time on Zoom, hosted by Emersonian Marilyn Rambo, a chance for you to gather in smaller groups to discuss the service and what's going on in your lives. Now, let us join in listening to our prelude.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the way. in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
As we work to create beloved community, we welcome all who would join us in building a better world with more love, more justice, and more peace. We welcome all who would join us in growing in mind, heart, and spirit. We welcome all who would join us in tearing down systems of oppression of all kinds. We welcome all who would join their purposes to ours in a loving spirit of right relationship. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, wherever you find yourself on your life's journey, whichever your pronouns, whether you've walked in or rolled in or dialed in, whomever you love, you are welcome here among us. Let us join now in hearing our opening words. This is called Shaking the Tree by Jean Lohman. Vine and branch were connected in this world of sound and echo, figure and shadow, the leaves contingent, roots pushing against earth. An apple belongs to itself, to stem and tree, to air that claims it, then ground. Connections balance, each motion changes another. Precarious, hanging together, we don't know what our lives support, and we touch in the least shift of breathing. Each holy thing is borrowed. Everything depends. With that, let us deepen into the spirit of worship together. We light our chalice today with these words by Florence Caplow. We kindle this flame, honoring the doorways in our souls, the windows through which we gaze at one another, the balconies where we catch glimpses of sky, the thresholds we stand on this morning, wondering, hoping, fearing, and dreaming. I invite you now to please rise, either in body or in spirit, for our opening hymn, Meditation on Breathing.
Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in, I'll 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 breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out,
Our story this morning is for both the young and the young at heart, and this is called The Pillowcase Full of Feathers. In a small town somewhere in Eastern Europe, there lived a nice man who was very curious. And being curious wasn't a bad thing, of course, but sometimes his curiosity became a problem. He ended up talking too much about other people. He couldn't help it. Whenever he heard a story about somebody he knew, and sometimes about somebody he didn't know, he just had to tell it to his friends. And since he was in business, he heard quite a lot of rumors and stories. And he loved the attention he got and was delighted when they laughed because of the way he told his anecdotes, which he sometimes embellished with little details he invented to make them funnier and juicier. Other than that, he was really a pleasant, good-hearted man. He kind of knew it was wrong, but it was too tempting. And in any case, most of what he told had really happened, didn't it? Many of his stories were just innocent and entertaining, weren't they? One day, he found out something really weird but true about another businessman in town. And of course, he felt compelled to share what he knew with his colleagues, who told it to their friends, who told it to people they knew, who told it to their wives, who spoke with their friends and their neighbors. And it went around town till the unhappy businessman, who was the main character in the story, heard it. He went to the rabbi of the town and was worried about this. He was worried that his business would be ruined. Nobody would like to deal with him after this. His good name and his reputation were gone. And now this rabbi knew his customers, and he decided to summon the man who loved to tell stories. If he was not the one who started them, he might at least know who did. When the nice man with the nasty problem heard from the rabbi how devastated his colleague was, he felt sorry. He honestly had not considered it such a big deal to tell this story, because it was true. The rabbi could check it out if he wanted. But the rabbi sighed. True, not true, it really makes no difference. You just can't tell stories about people. This is a really bad way to communicate. You're hurting this man's reputation. And he said a lot more, and the man who started the rumor now felt really bad and really sorry. And he said, "What can I do to make it undone? I'll do anything you say," he said to the rabbi. And the rabbi looked at him and said, "Do you have any feather pillows in your house?" And he said, "Yes, of course. What do you want me to do with them?" And the rabbi said, "Just bring me one." And the man was mystified. But he returned a little bit later to the rabbi's office with a nice fluffy pillow under his arm. The rabbi opened the window and handed him a knife. "Cut it open," he said. "But Rabbi, here in your study, it will make a mess." But the rabbi said, "Do what I said, cut open the pillow." And so the man cut it open, and a cloud of feathers came out. They landed on the chairs and on the bookcase, on the clock, on the cat, which jumped after them. They floated over the table and into the teacups, on the rabbi and on the man with the knife, and a lot of them flew out the window in a big swirling trail. The rabbi waited about 10 minutes. Then he ordered the man, "Now bring me back all the feathers and stuff them back in your pillow. All of them. Not a single one can be missing." The man stared at the rabbi in disbelief. "That's impossible, Rabbi. The ones here in this room, I might get most of them, but the ones that flew out the window are gone. Rabbi, I can't do that, and you know it." "Yes," the rabbi said. "That is how it is. Once you start with a rumor, a story, a secret leaves your mouth, you don't know where it ends up. It flies on the wings of the wind, and you can never get it back. He ordered the man to deeply apologize to the person about whom he had spread the rumor. That's difficult and painful, but it was the least he could do. So I want to share with you all something a mentor of mine used to ask herself before speaking that kind of relates to this story. And she would ask, is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? We are all imperfect people who make mistakes a lot of the time. But this might help us to guide the way we talk to and about each other, just like the man learned from the feathers in the pillow. Thank you all for listening.
I think this is where we do offering. Giving out of what is our own is a transformative act. As a community of faith, we collect an offering not for ourselves or our congregation, but to give to others as a collective action of our community and as a way to live out our shared values. Please give with a generous heart to support our it says August, but it's July, Share the Plate recipient, the Texas Unitarian Universalist Justice Ministry, or Texas UUJM. This is a statewide justice ministry that raises the voice of Unitarian Universalist values in the public arena and seeks to have those values enacted into legislation and promulgated in public policy. The remaining 25% of our offering goes to our ongoing commitment to Interfaith Ministries Meals on Wheels, feeding Houston's seniors. We have 4 ways to give. You can text the number on the screen, go to our webpage for online giving, or you can put in our offering basket, this up front and in the back, or mail a check to the church. And during this offering time, if there are children in the midst, Tanika will take them and do something special in the back.
Please find a comfortable place to be or a comfortable position in your seats, and place your feet flat on the floor if you can and if you will, so that you might feel grounded, more connected to the earth, which nourishes and sustains us all. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so, and take a deep breath in. Together, we'll enter into a time of prayer and meditation, followed by silence. Our spoken prayer this morning comes from the writings of the Reverend Kristen Schmidt. Breath of life, moving in and out, around and among us, for one more day to breathe the precious air of life, for all that's transpired to bring us here today, for the many gifts and blessings we enjoy, each and all, we give thanks. It is often said that rather than looking for the perfect time or place, we are called to bloom where we've been planted. For there are no perfect places or times, there is only here and now. As we each do our best to live good and generous lives in an ever complicated and precarious world, as this congregation does its best to live into the purpose we've been called to serve, help us keep things simple. Help us remember that the most important time is always now. The most important people are the ones we are with, the ones we've been planted near. That the most important thing is for us to do good. These and all things we pray in the name of all that we find holy. Let us enter now into a time of silence together. Amen, and blessed be. Our reading today is entitled The Demanding Tree by the Reverend Victoria Weinstein, and she says this is with apologies to Shel Silverstein. Once there was a tree, and she loved a little boy. And every day the boy would come, and he would gather her leaves and make them into crowns and play king of the forest. And the tree loved the little boy, but the tree was a bit irritated. King of the forest, my trunk, she thought. Wherever did those human beings get such an attitude problem? Time went by, and the boy grew older, and the tree was often alone, which was nice and quiet, but she missed the boy. And then one day the boy came to the tree, and the tree called out to him, "Come, boy, come and climb up my trunk and swing from my branches and eat my apples and play in my shade and be happy." "I'm too big to climb and play," said the boy. "I want to buy things and have fun. I want money. Can you give me some money?" "Not a chance," said the tree. "I have only leaves and apples." "Why don't you get a job if money's so important to you?" "I hear that the Nature Conservancy is looking for staff. Why don't you apply?" And so the boy applied for the job and stuffed envelopes and encouraged paperwork reduction and processed donations, and the tree was happy. But the boy stayed away for a long time, and the tree was sad. And then one day the boy came back, and the tree shook with joy, and she said, "What took you so long? You don't call, you don't write. How's your job going?" "I'm too busy to talk with you," said the boy. "I want a house to keep me warm. I want a partner and I want children, so I need a house. Can you give me a house?" "Of course I can't give you a house," replied the tree. "The forest is my house. But you're certainly welcome to pitch a tent on the ground here, and we'll have a great time." "Thanks, but no thanks, tree," said the boy. "Maybe I'll start an intentional community with some of my friends." "Okay," cheered the tree. "You Americans already have too many houses anyway. Why build another?" And so the boy went off to start a co-op with a group of people, and the tree was happy. But the boy stayed away a very long time, and when he came back, the tree was so happy she waved her branches excitedly. "Well, would you look what the cat dragged in? Look at you, boy. Good Lord, you look awful. You humans don't age as well as trees, do you?" "You've got that right, dear tree," replied the boy. "I wish I could stay and shoot the breeze with you, but I'm too old and sad. I want a boat that will take me far away from here. Can you give me a boat?" "Whoa," said the tree. "I don't like the way you're looking at my trunk. You want to get far away from here? You've got legs. Walk. And on the way, why don't you take some of these seeds and plant some more trees? It'll do us all some good." And so the boy embraced the tree, took the seeds, and started on his journey. And the tree was happy, really. After a long, long time, the boy came back again. "I'm sorry, boy," said the tree. "You have no more teeth to sink into my apples. You're too fragile to swing in my branches. Your friends are long gone, and your old legs can't take you around as they used to. We both know that you're at the end of your story and that I will long outlast you. I just wish that I could give you something to comfort you." "I don't need very much," said the boy, "just a quiet place to swing and rest." "Well," said the tree, straightening herself up as much as she could, "well, this old tree is good for swinging and resting. Come, boy, tie your hammock on this branch over here, and on this branch way over here. Come and swing from my arms and rest." And the boy did. And the tree was very happy. We, as human beings who are relational, whose lives are bound up with others, are asked regularly to make choices. We make choices about our attention, our time, our money. In life, people are always asking for our help with this or that, and it is up to us to decide how to respond. And for some of us, what to say yes to and what to say no to is fairly easy, intuitive. But for others of us, it may be more difficult. We may feel anxious that if we say no, that person will be mad at us, or somehow will no longer value our relationship. For many of us, we may have been raised with the idea that you are expected to say yes to helping others, that you say yes no matter the cost. Oftentimes, folks who live in the world as women are socialized to say yes more than no. We're afraid of not being liked or of hurting another's feelings. My colleague Chloe Brede points out that comfortability with saying no is also regional. She recently read an article that describes the difference between askers and guessers. Askers tend to be coastal types, and guessers are usually Midwesterners. Here's how the article from Amber Leventree describes the difference between the two. Askers believe that it's okay to ask for anything, but usually understand that the answer could be no. Yes, there can be feelings of rejection and disappointment, but the asker anticipates those possibilities. Askers are usually able and willing to say no when someone asks them a question. For askers, the no is easier both to hear and to say. To a guesser, askers may seem rude or invasive because guessers would never put someone in the position of having to say no. Why would you make someone feel bad if they couldn't do the thing you needed or wanted? Instead, guessers rely on subtlety and context clues to get what they want by waiting for someone to offer what they're looking for rather than just asking. To an asker, guessers may seem passive-aggressive or incomprehensible in their subtlety. So saying no may be harder or easier for you depending on who you are and the culture you come from. Lately, I think many of us have heard quite a bit about boundaries in our society, but it is almost taken for granted that we know what they are or how to set them. I've come to see that our social location and even our age and generation at which we come of age can have a major impact on our ability to understand boundaries. The explanation of boundaries that I have heard cited so many times comes from the movie Dirty Dancing. And if it's been a while since you've seen it, let me give you a recap. So there's a scene where Johnny and Baby are practicing a routine together, and Johnny's getting really frustrated with her because she's constantly in his space. She's not holding her arms in place. She's not a dancer, and so she doesn't have this intuitive knowledge. And finally, he says something like, "This is my space, that's your space. You hold your arms up and you hold the frame." You hold the frame. Boundaries are about what's mine, what's yours, and give us a framework as we move through life. Writer, therapist, and political organizer Prentice Hemphill writes, "Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously." In other words, a boundary is about when you might need to say no or not right now so that you can open yourself to saying yes somewhere else. The Reverend Jake Morrill recently published a book on boundaries. And he describes boundaries as our right and responsibility to define what is and isn't acceptable within us. Boundaries are the intentional choices we make to define ourselves. They say, this is mine and that is not mine. This is what I will be responsible for, and this is what I won't be responsible for. We heard this same idea earlier in Victoria Weinstein's retelling of the story, The Giving Tree. In the original story, the tree gives and gives and gives until there's almost nothing left. And some of us, in various phases of our lives, have probably been like that tree, running ourselves into the ground, giving everything we had without a thought of saying no, without a thought toward caring for our own selves for whatever reason. Maybe it didn't feel safe to say no. Maybe no one ever taught us how. And the thought of any of you like that hurts my heart. Maybe no one ever told you that it is sometimes more loving to do what we can for others with joy than to do everything possible, to overfunction so much that it breeds resentment within us. To say no can be an act of care. But in the reframing of the story, the tree knows what she can and can't do, and communicates that openly and directly and with love. This is our task, to learn where our limits are and to communicate them. It may be difficult at first, but over time, it gets easier. We remind ourselves that to be clear and to be honest is also to be kind. We all have limits on what we can offer to others and to the world. We are human beings, and we can only do so much. We've talked a lot about call and calling this year, and this is also where some judgment and discernment comes into play, because we can't answer every single call. We have to practice some way of knowing where our big soul yearnings are and where are the things that we can let go, at least for now. To be able to adequately discern boundaries, we also need to have an understanding of who we are. We need to do some work on self-differentiation. Robert Masters writes, "We cannot hope to mature and find true integration without first being clearly differentiated, vividly and unmistakably outlined. Good boundaries provide and support this essential differentiation in our lives." The Bowen Center for the Study of the Family says that people with a poorly differentiated self depend so heavily on the acceptance and approval of others that they either quickly adjust what they think, say, and do to please others, or they dogmatically proclaim what others should be like and pressure them to conform. And to be clear, none of this is a judgment call. These are emotional and spiritual skills that I think all people need in order to live in this world. And they are things we are all working on all of the time. The Reverend Carl Gregg touches on this too in his writing on boundaries and family systems. He says, "To begin, childhood creating our current reality is related to what I call survival mode. When we are under stress, our human tendency is to revert to maladaptive, habitual behaviors rooted in the family systems we grew up in and/or our traumas from the past." The psychologist Carl Jung said it this way in a sentence that has stuck with me ever since. "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's heavy. And what can often remain unconscious for us, while powerfully shaping our habitual reactions, are various aspects of the family systems we experienced in early childhood. Congregations can work like families, and therefore we function as a family system. For some of us in our families of origin, we may have been taught, either outright or inadvertently, that it was our job to make other people happy, to please others, to always say yes. And this can have a major impact on how we move through the world as adults, even if we've come to realize that that dynamic wasn't healthy. We may find ourselves subconsciously highly anxious, afraid to say no, find ourselves trying to gain approval from people who aren't really looking to give it. On the other hand, those who've developed a sense of self-differentiation are able to listen and hear others, but remain calm in the face of conflict and are able to distinguish facts from emotions. Their decision-making is guided by their values. This is something we need to try to continually work on throughout our life. Reverend Carl Gregg goes on to say, part of what we can do is become more aware of those patterns so that we can make more intentional choices. Even just to increase our awareness of our patterns can be a powerful first step in allowing us to interrupt them, to unhook ourselves, to open up the possibility for more free, generous, and compassionate responses to our lives, to our experiences of reality. What I appreciate about this sort of perspective is that it can be tremendously empowering. There's a saying that we don't experience the world simply as it is. We experience the world as we are. We each really do play a role in co-creating our experience of reality. But let us add an important caveat that is often left out of such approaches. I'm not saying that reality is all in our individual control. Reality is what doesn't go away when you stop believing in it. Regardless of what's happening in our world, there are transformative steps available on the individual level to change our experience of ourselves, others, and the world. And at the same time, it's really important to acknowledge that regardless of what we do on an individual level, systemic problems like racism, sexism, classism, and homophobia will continue to have disproportionate impacts on historically oppressed groups, and that we must continue to work to dismantle those systems. So during the pandemic, I began following Casey Davis, or Domestic Blisters, on TikTok. And while she mainly talks about care tasks and neurodivergence, she also talks a lot about boundaries, reminding us that setting boundaries is about what you can control. So, for example, saying you can't do that or you can't say that is not a boundary, because we can't, in fact, control what other people do or say. That's not in our space, right? But we can say, if you choose to say those kind of things in my presence, I'll have to leave. Because we can control our own selves. It's about what we can be responsible for, what's in our space. As the Reverend Joanna Fontaine Crawford says, boundaries aren't boundaries without consequences. They're just wishes. And so that also brings us to the question of where our boundaries are in Unitarian Universalism. In a faith with many open-ended aspects, where are the boundaries drawn? The Reverend Joan Javier Duval shares this. The psychologist M. Scott Peck provides a definition of love in his 1978 book, The Road Less Traveled. He defines love as the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. This definition gives both direction and purpose to our understanding of love. There's an outward movement to it, as choice and effort are exerted, and its purpose is spiritual growth, which I take to mean the movement towards greater well-being and wisdom in body, mind, and spirit. With this understanding of love in mind, I think it's important to point out that the boundless love of Unitarian Universalism cannot exist without boundaries. If we extend ourselves without limits, we are likely to feel depleted over time. There is an art to the practice of love that supports us in giving freely and generously of our love within our capacities and in balance with our own needs. I think we can also all recognize that love is often companioned by pain. We are humanly imperfect in how we express love, and we are likely to hurt and to be hurt by others in the human endeavor of love. This is true in our most intimate relationships of family, friendship, and romance, and it is also true in our church community. Because of this likelihood of causing pain in relationships of love, we must also recognize another boundary that we put on love, the boundary of accountability when we do not live up to our aspirations and when we cause harm, intentionally or not, to others. Accountability is a practice we never finish or cross off the list. You all probably know this, but when a minister leaves a congregation, whether they've been there 2 years or 20, there are boundaries around leaving. That means that when a minister leaves, as difficult as it may be, the communication will stop. We won't be in communication. Ministers don't reach out to members, and members should not reach out to them. And some have said that to them this feels harsh and that they don't understand this. And I can empathize, but let me say, these boundaries are in place to help build relationships. If you were still having a relationship with your last minister, how would you be able to see whoever comes next as your minister too? This is about allowing the next person to come in and to love you in a way that may be different, and to do things that you all can do together that was different than what has come before, for you all to have a chance to grow together. It's not because we as ministers stop caring as soon as we walk out the door. It is, in fact, because we continue caring that we practice the discipline of holding boundaries. As a colleague once described it, you fall in love and then you walk away. I've also seen what can happen when these boundaries are not respected, both by ministers and members of congregations. And it's led to many hurt feelings and quite a bit of harm, both to individuals and the system of the church as a whole. I've left congregations before, and let me assure you that the love doesn't stop. It just becomes different. I, from time to time, will have folks from other churches I've served cross my mind for one reason or another. And when that happens, I send a prayer of well-being and well wishes to them, wherever they are, and move forward fondly, knowing that it was a gift to know them for a time. This is also why good goodbyes are important in these cases. It's a chance to say what you need to say and call it done. Outside of what's required by our professional organization, different people have different boundaries and different ministers have different boundaries. Don't expect someone to teach the same way and preach the same way and be willing to hug and to do ministry the same way. Holding these expectations, consciously or subconsciously, sets us up for failure and can cause us to miss out on the wonder of a new relationship. So as we close our time together, let us remember that setting and communicating our limitations is part of how we function as healthy people in this world. It honors the sacredness of our own being to acknowledge what we can and cannot do. It is a way of caring for our spirits. So I wonder, where in your life do you feel a sense of energy right now that's giving your life purpose, that feels good and exciting? That might be a place to move toward. And where in your life do you feel drained, burned out, maybe even resentful? Where might you need to start saying no? Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. May it be so. Amen. I invite you now to please rise, either in body or in spirit, and join in singing our closing hymn, Let It Be a Dance.
So sing along with me on Let It Be a Dance, hymn number 311. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you, through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let a dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the words, and fill the sky with sailing birds. Let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. Learn to follow, learn to lead. Feel the rhythm, feel the need. To reap the harvest, plant the seed. And let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you, through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Everybody turn and spin. Let your body learn to bend. And like a willow in the wind, let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. A child is born, the old must die. A time for joy, a time to cry. Take it as it passes by. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Morning stars come out at night. Without the dark there is no light. If nothing's wrong, then nothing's right. Let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. Let the sun shine, let it rain. Share the laughter, bear the pain. And round we go again. Let it be a dance.
Let us go forth from our time together today to practice the holy work of holding boundaries. Go in peace.
This might be where I do the, hold on. Okay. So this would be where I'd have announcements. And we've already talked about social time here and on Zoom, and the lunch bunch that's going to Jason's, I believe. And you all have seen all the good work. If you haven't, you should look in all the little spaces. There's been an amazing amount of decluttering going on here at the church, and Westwood Hall is filling up with rummage sale items. So feel free to stop by and visit there or bring some items, and then help and volunteer on the 22nd of July is when the rummage sale from 9 to 12. Are there other announcements that aren't written here that should be shared? Hearing none, I think this ends our service.